My love for reading children's books started when I was teaching. I loved finding the perfect book to go along with what I was teaching the kids. Fast forward when I had my own kids, every night, I look forward to the times every night getting to read to them and look at the beautiful illustrations. And I started reading the Goodnight books to my kids, kind of where if we were traveling, I would try to find the Goodnight books so we could learn about the area. I decided we needed one for our little corner of the world.
That's amazing.
One day I sat down and wrote it.
That is so cool.
And decided to do it.
Hi, my name is Jessica McCoy, and I am your podcast host here at Raising Midland, a podcast for parents of the Permian. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. I'm here with my friend, Callie Fuqua, who's a children's book author. Now, normally, probably listened, we've focused on highlighting organizations and things to do here in Midland. But today, we're focusing on our friend, Callie, who wrote a book called Goodnight West Texas, in collaboration and illustrated by Richard Cowdrey, who's a New York Times best-selling artist. You may know him from the Fiona the Hippo series, and I think you might know Callie as well after reading this book. Join me as I introduce my friend, Callie Fuqua. Hi, Callie. How's it going?
Good.
Now, I will tell you, it's interesting when you start to interview your friends because you really want to do them a good job. So hopefully I'll do you proud today. So a couple things about you. You went to A&M.
I went to A&M.
So you're a big, proud Aggie, right?
Yes, and I'm a native West Texan.
Okay, wait. So when you say native West Texan, what does that mean?
I was born and raised here. On one side of my family, I'm fourth generation, and on the other, sixth generations. On my dad's side, the ranch that they have in Fisher County, out by Snyder, has been in the family. Gosh, I'm gonna mess this up, but I think it's since 1886.
Wow.
Need to double check that.
That's
okay. Somewhere in the 1800s, late 1800s.
Wow.
So
did they do ranching their whole lives? Is that so?
And my dad's still doing it.
That's insane.
Still got it going.
That is so cool. Okay,
yeah.
So I don't know if I feel like everyone would think that that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
But as an adopted person, I don't know a lot about my own family. So I think that that's fantastic. So that's your dad's side. So
yes,
on both sides, is both your sides of your family ranchers?
Yes.
Or?
So my dad's family came out here for ranching.
Wow.
And my mom's side of the family, they came out here for the oil and gas business.
Oh, wow.
But have also gotten into ranching in the Fort Davis area.
I was actually reading through your book, and on that note, there was quite a few things that I actually didn't know.
Really?
And I've lived here now for 9 years. For instance, the Odessa meteor crater.
Yeah.
What is that? I'm sorry. If anyone's in Odessa, I'm so sorry. I've lived here for 9 years. I've never heard of that. So what is the Odessa meteor crater?
Well, you'll see it if you're driving out to far West Texas. You'll see all the signs, Odessa meteor crater. And it was a meteor that hit in Odessa years and years and years ago. And it just made I think it's a 550-foot hole in the ground, which has since filled in,
Yeah, but still.
But yeah. And there's a museum, and
what?
They have pieces of the crater and
that's amazing.
Pieces of the meteor.
So one of the things that I've learned, it's so hard because when you live in a town, and I feel part of the reason why I started this podcast is because my husband's a native Midlander, right?
Yeah.
Midland High, went to Fannin, all of the things. And my in-laws have lived here for 40 plus years. So I think sometimes when you live here for a long time or live anywhere, you get kind of used to things. You get used to seeing the Odessa meteor crater sign.
Yeah.
Or the Sandhills signs, right? But you don't actually go unless it's with your school.
That's so true.
So I was looking and I was like, okay, so I was checking off the things that I needed to take with our kids. We got married at Lajitas. So in Big Bend, but I had never been to Big Bend since then. And we just took our kids down to that area, and my kids were like, oh my gosh, are these mountains? And I'm like, they're West Texas mountains.
I know, which is so crazy. So many people don't realize that we have beautiful mountains.
Exactly. And Fort Davis, right? Is you have your family goes down there quite frequently, right?
Yes.
So cool.
Yeah.
But the Odessa meteor crater, she mentions it in here. Balmorhea, I'm a swimmer and I have not been to Valmarais yet.
You have to go.
What do you feel is the culture of West Texas? Like, if you could identify it to someone who's never been here, how would you describe West Texas?
You know, I think that West Texas is a good picture of what people think of when they think of Texas.
Ooh, tell me more.
Like our little corner of Texas encapsulates what Texas is, you know, with the cowboys and wide open spaces, oil and gas business. I mean, you know, when people think of Texas, they think of people riding their horses down the street, and that happens.
Can I tell you a really funny story? So my grandfather is from Lithuania, and he literally thought, like, he lived in Ohio after he immigrated after World War II. He came down his first flight from Ohio wearing a cowboy boot and ostrich cowboy boots, because that's what he thought everyone would wear. And he was, well, luckily we were living in Houston, so that's not all that, people wear that all the time. But he was so surprised that not everyone wears cowboy boots and, cowboy hats. But here in West Texas, I feel like they do, you know?
Yeah.
So
they do.
I agree with you. One of the things that I love about one of the pages in your book is particularly talking about the Marfa lights, and, you know, you have the Marfa Prada building there. Your illustrator, Richard Cowdrey, he has a cowboy on one side and then he has an artist over here. And your words were perfect. Let me quote them because I feel like I'm going to botch it. But you specifically say the cowboys and artists and everyone in between. And I thought that that was the best way to really describe our community. So you can, hopefully we're getting this. Ryan, our producer, will probably help us out. But I thought that this was such a great way to describe West Texas, because truly it's like, I'm not from the deep at the heart of Texas. I'm more from South Texas, and it encapsulates and it emphasizes the importance of harmony. Mm-hmm. And I think harmony is a really good way to describe where we live.
For sure. And it's just, I mean, there's nothing like it. The culture and the people and the Southern charm. It's here in West Texas.
But I think it's more, to go reiterate on your point about Southern charm, it's adjacent to what we would think that we would see in other states, right?
Yeah.
It's salt of the earth.
For sure.
And I think one of my favorite things that I love about West Texans in particular is that they call it the way that they see it.
Which I love.
I do too.
I'm a very call it the way you see it person.
And I think that it's almost disarming in a way that makes you feel like it's a safe place to live. Mm-hmm. Because there's not a lot of pleasantries in regards to there's not a lot of fluff when we're talking to other West Texans. Yeah. It's more of, hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is how you see it. Great. We can agree to disagree and move on. I thought that was great. So another segue that I want to go into is, so we were talking about what inspired you to write a children's book in the first place. I can imagine that you probably did some storyboarding, because there's so much here in Midland that you probably, and in Odessa and in Pecos and everyone in between, right? Mm. How did you determine what you wanted to feature in the book?
That is a good question. So I had to figure out which cities I was going to include.
What was that process like? How did you determine that?
I tried to pick sort of the bigger ones. There's a bunch of little small towns, mm-hmm. and then I tried to pick the bigger ones and the ones that I knew.
Easily recognizable.
Yes.
Right? Because you have Imiletti in there.
Yes.
And you have there's a saddlery company. Big Ben Saddlery. And you have obviously the rodeo.
Yeah.
And
so I decided I was going to start kind of St. Angelo and Abilene.
Okay.
And then go west. Mm-hmm. And I had El Paso in there to start, but I I had to cut it back a little bit, so I decided to stop at kind of the Big Bend area.
Uh-huh.
And so then from Abilene and San Angelo, I just kind of picked the biggest
cities.
Well, or the cities that have kind of like I did Sweetwater because of the rattlesnake roundup.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to get the wind turbines and the
Yes,
cotton fields.
Which is also like a sensitive subject for people that are in Sweetwater.
Yes.
Our ranch is in Blackwell, which is about 30 minutes outside of Sweetwater.
Yeah.
So like there's a whole situation with the wind turbines, which personally I thought was really good that you included, because if you're from that area and you've heard the old hats talk about it, it's, to me, I thought it was hilarious because I was like, oh, this is going to be so funny to hear what they have to say. Because like, it is a part.
My dad deals with it and his Snyder Ranch too, but it is a big part. They're everywhere.
They are. Area. Personally, I think it's difficult to, I don't know, I feel like you're kind of like this too. I really appreciate the natural beauty of West Texas, and those wind turbines just take up space and it drives me nuts.
I agree.
So just to reiterate, you were looking at the cities that basically had some really good West Texas landmarks, have it be businesses or events. And then after that, what was that? Like, did you write it? Did you write your book?
Yes,
and
I
then,
did.
Okay.
So I had the towns picked out.
Mm-hmm.
I called my cousin, Robin, who did Goodnight Cowtown in 2011 for Fort Worth. And I said, I really want to do this. Was it worth it?
Yeah.
And she said, absolutely. It was so worth it. She self-published, though.
Wow. That is so hard to do.
Yes. And
so hard.
She said, she recommended trying to find a publisher that could kind of guide me.
Yeah.
And so I literally Googled best children's book publishers in Texas. And the first one that popped up was Brown Books out of Dallas.
Wow.
And I called them and requested a meeting and kind of pitched them my idea. And they said, yes, send us your story and we will decide if we want to take you on or not. So I scrambled and wrote it. And I did a lot of research on the places that I was including in the book. And because originally I wanted to have, like, for example, the rattlesnake roundup.
Yeah.
I wanted to have in the back of the book paragraphs of each of the places I included.
Yeah.
Kind of 2 or 3 sentences explaining
what it was.
More in depth what it was. We ended up not doing that. I think we're going to put that on my website. But anyway, I kind of scrambled to write it and then send it over to them a couple days later.
I love that.
And they agreed to take me on.
That is so cool. I feel like truly, you know, being a business owner myself, that's literally all this is. Like, people think that it's this whole like romanticized, oh, it's been decades in the making. When really, like, I think Ina Garten says this in her most recent memoir that she wrote. Be ready for when the luck happens.
Yeah.
And when it happens, like, it's just about how fast can I do it? You know?
Yeah.
I think that is such a cool story. How endearing. Like, I feel like sometimes when one of the most important things in our life happens, it's when we're not really ready.
Right.
But we're not ever really truly ready. Doesn't that describe parenting?
Yes.
You know?
And that describes this. I mean, I didn't really think about it. I just kind of did it.
That's so cool.
I didn't think like, ooh, do I have, the time to get this done? And I also didn't realize how long it would take.
How long did it take?
I started working on this. So I called Brown Books in November 2023.
Okay.
So,
oh my gosh.
That is the only copy of the book I have. They should be here in the next 2 weeks. But
that's literally maybe a year and a change.
Year, yeah.
That's amazing.
So it's been, but everything has been great. I mean, it's been a fun process, and
it's been awesome.
I mean, I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is exciting.
What a light there is, man. What was the most difficult part about writing the book?
I would like I said, it's been such an enjoyable process. I'd probably say maybe not difficult, but surprising would be the length of time it's taken.
Yeah.
But really, my publisher has made it so enjoyable.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say probably what I didn't think about necessarily was all the back end stuff, like, taxes and
best advice I ever received from someone here in Midland was get a good attorney and get a really good CPA and people that can help you with that. Like I truly, I don't think anyone.
My husband is an attorney.
Yes,
to read
there you
contracts.
Go. Great.
And I've got a good CPA, so that's good.
But isn't that like it's stuff that you don't think about? Because this is truly
you don't think about
you
it.
don't, and truly this is a business. So
exactly, and people think like, oh my gosh, it's so awesome. I've always wanted to write a children's book. That's a small part of it. There's a much bigger part of it, getting it in stores. And
how does that even do you just, I mean, sorry to sound naive, but do you just call like Barnes and Noble and be like, hey, so I wrote a children's book, or does your publisher do that for you?
So my publisher has been doing a lot of that, like with the big stores, Barnes & Noble, Target, Amazon.
You're going to be in Target?
Yes.
That's so cool.
You can already pre-order.
I'm such a nerd. Sorry. I just think that's amazing.
I know. I mean, it's very exciting. I would prefer that people get it through me.
Of course.
But
buy through Callie. Yes. CallieFuqua.com.
But so they've been doing all that. But since I kind of know the stores and people from most of the towns that are in the book.
Yeah.
I 3 weeks ago, I went to the Fort Davis area and I drove around. I went into Marfa and Alpine, Fort Davis, and started pitching my book to people.
I bet they're so proud.
Yeah,
they're like,
fun.
Look at this girl. Like, she wrote a book about our community. Yeah. Like, I can guarantee you, I'll have to take those to take some of your books down to Sweetwater.
Oh yeah,
and like, because that's easy. It's a hop, skip, and a jump for us to be able to go. That is so neat.
I think people. I mean, the feedback that I've gotten is, there's not a lot of children's books. Or if any, that are written about just West Texas.
And I think that's that's honestly like the theme of the podcast is challenging preconceived notions that we have about our community.
Yeah.
Have it be you're a native from Midland, but like, for me, I've lived here for 9 years and I haven't been to Malbray. Yeah. And like, I haven't been to the Odessa Meteor Crater.
Well, and people come out here and they think, oh, there's nothing to do.
I know. And truly there's
so much to do.
It's almost to the point where it's overwhelming. And then I think where people are held up inside themselves, where they don't really want to branch out, is because this is just my opinion. Being from a big city, it's intimidating to be in a small town.
Yes. That's
when everyone knows everyone. Mm-hmm. And I think that holds a lot of people back.
Yeah.
Because it's an inherently intimate community. But there's so much beauty behind that where people can actually see you and like get to know you rather than being in a big city and you're just another number.
Right. And you're so good at putting yourself out there.
And I just do it scared.
And making friends. I know. And it's amazing, but
you're sweet.
And I can't speak to this really because I'm from here, but people are so kind.
They really are.
If you just put yourself out there a little bit and get involved in anything, you'll make friends.
The way I see it is, and I think you could probably relate to this, is you just have to do it scared.
Yeah.
You don't know. I mean, I'm sure when you first started, you even said yourself, you're like, I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I'm going to take the first step. And I always tell my own children that what's important is to think about not so much your big goal, but think about what is the next right step towards that goal.
Yeah, that's a good advice.
Yeah, you can't like look at I'm sure when you first started, you weren't thinking like, okay, I'm going to have a jackrabbit and a cowboy on the front. Like you get overwhelmed by the details. But if you're like, okay, the first step is I need to find a publisher.
Yeah.
Or, you called your cousin. She said, call the publisher. So you Googled
Just
something
one
very
step
simple.
at a time.
Really, truly. But isn't that also, I think that's also the definition of West Texas is just figure it out.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And you know what? Midland is the last place people want to move, but the last place people want to leave.
Isn't that what they say? They say you cry because you're moving here, and then you cry when you leave. I told my husband this because, the cyclical nature of the oil and gas industry, we're thinking, what are our kids going to see in 30 years? Yeah. And I think if you invest back into your community and highlight the positives of it, people are going to be more inclined to become generational West Texans,
For sure.
just like your family.
For sure.
Just as a mother myself, how wonderful it is that Richard Cowdrey, your illustrator, it looks like he drew your husband. He drew your kids.
He did.
And I just think that is the most special thing.
Yes, that was one of my cousin's pieces of advice to me. She said the girl who illustrated her book kind of included her kids throughout.
So sweet.
And I think, you know what? I'm gonna try to get Richard to do that. And
that is so cool.
He did a great job. And
what other books has he done before?
Fiona the Hippo.
Oh my God, I love that book.
The Marley series.
Yeah.
I mean, he is incredible. Wow. I give all the credit to him. He made the book.
Okay, I don't think we talked about this, but how did you find him? I'm not trying to poke fun, but did you Google Best Illustrator?
No.
Because I would do that.
Well, my publisher, they kind of have a list of illustrators. And
I didn't know that.
That they've worked with before. And so I kind of went through their list, and then they also said, pull some books that you love the illustrations of. And so I kind of went through the books we had at home, and I was reading this Marley book to my kids and loved his illustrations. And I brought him to my publisher and I said, I really want to reach out to this guy and see if he'll do it. And we called him and he agreed. And he is worth it tenfold.
That's amazing. So, again, you just put yourself, you say that you appreciated that about me, but truly it's something that you do yourself.
Well,
you put yourself out. Do you know how brave that? I feel like that needs to be acknowledged, because to write a children's book, it probably feels like another child, right?
It does.
And then to put yourself out there, I feel like this describes parenting as well. When you're a parent, you're putting your child out there and you're like, please, Lord, please don't let anyone be mean to my child. It's very vulnerable to have a child.
Yeah.
But to have something it's different. Obviously, it's not a child, but it's objectively accessible to so many, which means you're exposing yourself.
That's true.
A lot. And I just want to acknowledge the bravery behind that, because it is one thing to put yourself out there in a controlled environment. It's another thing to put yourself out there in the art space, in the literary space. And there's going to be so many teachers and librarians that are going to look at it. And I mean, I'm an educator's kid. Okay. I'm already looking at this book and I'm like, when you said the back section of your book, I'm already thinking lesson plans.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
How can we teach, ecological preservation of our Texas native animals, right? The Sweetwater Roundup actually produces some of the highest concentrations of rattlesnake venom to be used in antivenom shots for dogs. And I think for humans too. Yeah. So that's a huge science lesson in itself. Were you thinking about that when you were writing? Were you thinking how could I make this into a lesson plan? How could teachers?
I was, and that was kind of going back and getting the facts and really researching about all the places. That was the point behind that. And in some of the Goodnight books that we have, they have the facts, which I really like. But I'm excited, even though they're not in mine, that they'll be on the website, so that, kids kids can get on there with their parents, or the teachers can get on there, have the kids go and research their own places. I think it's really going to be, I hope that it'll really be an educational tool for parents and teachers alike.
That's so cool. Wow. Well, I always ask everybody, what is your biggest hope for West Texas? Like, what do you hope your kids get to experience in Midland as they grow up here?
You know, there are, with the oil and gas business being here, it's growing rapidly. I mean, it has grown so much since I've been back, since college and the last 8 years. And then in the 30 years of my lifetime, it's so much different. And I think that we're growing in a positive way. I mean, our leaders are bound and determined to make this an amazing place to live. We're getting all sorts of things that are making our community a better place. I mean, better schools, better places for activities, and I mean, more people coming in, and it's just, and businesses and all the things, and it's amazing. And I hope that my kids love it so much that they want to come back here someday, because I think we will be here for the rest of our lives.
I heard that. I don't want to move anywhere else.
No.
I truly don't. And I sincerely mean that. It's about, what are you willing to put out in the world?
Yeah.
It's one thing to be an internet troll and be like, there's nothing here to do on Facebook.
Yeah.
It's another thing to develop something, or to even put yourself out there to get to know other people.
It is, for sure. And I think our kids it's going to be a great place for our kids. It's a great place to raise kids too.
Slow down. It's not rushing.
Life is a little slower.
Yeah.
It's nice.
I feel like it's so much better. I mean, I'm not a parent expert, but I think there's something to be said about slowing down.
For sure.
Instead of like, I mean, you taught in Houston.
Yeah.
It's like, super, super quick. And I think it's really important for everyone to slow down a little bit. And maybe that's why people think that there's not a lot of stuff to do around here, because they're used to a faster pace.
Yeah.
But there's something so beautiful. I know I've experienced it. I know you've experienced it. But there's something to be said about slowing down and putting yourself out there, and then doing it scared.
Yeah.
On that note, we should trademark that.
Yeah, we should.